Hello everyone, Oregon Moto John. As you can see, we're setting up to do an oil change on a 2024 Honda 300L. This would apply to the rally model as well as the lower model, low seat height model. And so this is so simple. We just need 1.6 quarts of 1030 or 1040 motorcycle oil. I'm using Honda oil. You could use a motorcycle oil, but it just has to be safe for a wet clutch. So your clutch doesn't slip, so don't use car oil. It has to specify it in your manual. It has to be for MA rated, so it doesn't cause and have this SJ rating. We don't want it to slip. So the easiest thing is to get some motorcycle oil. We have a Honda oil filter, 15410 KYJ 902. We have a washer, and then we have the gasket that goes for the filter housing, and it's part number Honda 15412 KYJ 901. And then all you need is an 8mm to remove these 4 oil filter housing bolts, and we need a 12mm for the oil plug in the bottom of the motor. And then we just refill with oil after we change out the filter and drain the oil. So this is super, super easy. I mean, one thing I like about Hondas is, and of course you need a drain pan and a place, something to drain the oil into once for recycling, a container, a gallon milk jug or something. You can take that to an auto parts store or to your local recycling center. But Hondas are so easy to service, and they have high service intervals. That's one thing that makes them so nice to work with. So basically, let's go ahead and get started. This is a break-in oil change. Honda recommends you perform it at around 600 miles. I'm doing this around 500 miles, actually sort of like 450. So let's go ahead and get started. The first step is to clean your motorcycle, or at least clean up around the engine. So if you know, here I've cleaned the whole bike, but you can see the filter housing is clean. So when I remove this, I'm not introducing particulates into the engine. So that's really important. Also, where the drain plug is in the bottom of the motor is clean too. I've cleaned the entire bike, but if you were in a hurry, you could just clean around the critical areas. Okay, we're on the clutch side of the bike. We're going underneath there, and you'll see that there's a 12mm nut under here, and there it is. There it is, right there. It's 12mm. One time when I first got the bike, I started to go after that one, and I quickly realized that's the wrong one. So it is not that. This is the right one. It's a 12mm. So that's the one that you need to loosen. So we're going to go ahead and get a ratchet on there, and that should crack open without too much. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty, and there it goes. Broke it loose. Now we have our drain pan underneath here, of course, to catch the dirty oil. You could warm up the motor first. It's generally recommended so it comes out a little faster. If it is, just remember it's going to be hot and don't burn yourself. And we'll pull this out, and here comes the oil. We'll let that drain. While that's draining, let's go up top and get the oil filter done. While that's draining, I'll also clean up my oil plug. Make sure that it has the washer. In this case, my washer did not come off, so I'll be sure to get that off before I reinstall this so we can replace the washer. In some instances, you may not need to replace the washer every time, but it's generally advisable, so I'm going to go ahead and do it for the sake of this video for correctness. Okay, I always like to set up my work area so it's nice and clean. So next, you can use a ratchet, or you could use one of these little T-handles, and we're just going to remove all of these. Make sure that you have your drip pan so it could catch oil when this starts to come out. And I also have a clean place for my filter housing to go. And now we're just going to loosen up all of these now. You could go in a crisscross fashion, but it's not completely necessary. And we're going to remove all those bolts and remove the filter housing. So as these bolts come loose, the oil will start to come out, and we'll just remove all of these bolts one by one and put that filter housing aside. All the filter housing bolts are the same length, so that makes it easy. And then it's just a matter of taking off the filter housing. And notice there's a spring. That spring will be in the same orientation when we put it back. And notice the orientation of the filter. It says out this side, so obviously this side will go out. So when you put the new one in, the rubber side will go in. And we'll set this filter aside. Okay, we'll remove this gasket. Sometimes you could reuse that, but for correctness, I'm going to replace it. We'll take a clean rag. These are just Costco shop towels. They work really well. And I'm going to wipe all of this out and get it all clean. This is why cleaning your bike up is so important. You don't want to introduce any matter into this as you're doing it. So we're just going to get this cleaned up. I'm also going to wipe this housing down to make sure both these mating surfaces are clean. No debris, so that when we put our gasket on, it doesn't cause a problem with sealing if there's debris there. Next, we're going to take our new filter. Remember, it said rubber side in, and this should say outside filter cover, so we know that goes to the outside. Couldn't be easier. You'll feel that snap into place as you twist it over that rubber cover. And now it's just a matter of getting our gasket into place, making sure that stays lined up as we put our bolts back in. Here we are, we have our filter in place, we have clean mating surfaces, we have our gasket in place, and we have our spring in place, and now I'm just going to push this on. You could put a dab of grease in there to hold the spring, but I've had good success with just lining this up, watching and holding my finger against the spring and putting it up against the filter. So we're going to go ahead and put that on there now. So here I am, I lightly put pressure against the filter, and as I'm holding that there, with my other hand, I'm putting the screws in, starting them by hand so I don't cross thread anything in the motor. And you should feel that spring pushing out on this housing. See how if I release it, it springs out? That's that spring pushing up against that oil filter. That means you've got it done right. Now when I tighten these down, I'm going to go in a star pattern here, 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 and here, and repeat that. Just these do not go super tight. These are small little bolts. Just when they bottom out, you just bottom them out and make sure they're lightly hand tight, and that's it. Don't torque on those, you'll strip them. You do have to push down that brake pedal to get on this lower one, but just slightly hand snug there. Just a little bit of a snug there. A little bit of a snug there. A little bit of a snug there. And I'm going to go around again. Here. 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 And you see I'm just using my fingers. This doesn't need, if you crank on these with a socket or something, you will strip them out. And then when those quit turning, you're not getting any more turns out of them, you are there. Call it good. Now let's put our drain bolt back in with the washer. Now that's all tight, go ahead and wipe down around where this is. You can use contact cleaner or just a good rag, you can get it pretty clean. Looking good. Might as well do it right. A little tip, if you are using a ratchet like this to tighten this down, grab it up high up here so you're not getting so much leverage by coming out here. It's easy to strip those. Grab up here and that'll give you a better feel for when you're tightening those down. Or you can use a T-handle wrench like what I was using. So you can see we still have our washer up here. Let's go ahead and make sure that comes out. Oh, there it goes. Piece of cake. Now let's get this nice and clean with the rag, wipe that off, and then we'll put the new washer and plug in. Okay, now a good tip is to put some grease on this washer and also on the threads of your drain bolt. You could also upgrade to a magnetic bolt. This is a gold plug and it's the MP01, but this is good for a Honda CRF 300L. Your vehicle may need a different application. And we're going to put grease on the threads, but not to where it will go into the motor. Okay, so here we have grease on the threads, and we're going to go ahead and put that in the engine. We've already cleaned that mating surface. So we have grease on the washer, the bolt threads, but not out where it's going to go into the engine. And we're just going to put this in and snug it up. Always start it by hand. And this isn't going to go crazy tight, just just to where it kind of stops. And when it stops, you stop right there. Don't use like crazy strength like you're torquing a lug nut. You want it firm, but you don't want to strip this out into the engine case. When it stops, you can give it one more little test pull, and if it doesn't go anymore, it's in. So now it's just a matter of removing your oil fill plug. Go ahead and remove that. Set it aside. We'll clean that plug up. And then you want to wipe around here to catch any debris and wipe so it doesn't go into the motor. The whole reason we're changing the oil is to keep it clean, so keep this as clean as possible. Clean rag, wiping, turning the rag, go into a different clean part so you get all the debris around there. We don't want anything to fall into the engine. Okay, we got that nice and clean. And now we'll go ahead and use I have a funnel. Any funnel would do that works. I just happen to have this flow tool. Looks like it's 10701 flow tool funnel, multi-purpose funnel, but any funnel will do. And we're going to add 1.6 quarts of oil. We'll add 1.5, let's say. We'll start the engine, let it circulate through the filter in the housing, and then recheck it, and then let the bike run about a minute or two, and then shut it off, wait a couple minutes, and then we recheck, and we want it to be in between these two levels when the bike is level, not on the center stand because it's leaned over, but level. We want the oil to be in between those two marks somewhere. So this is supposed to take 1.6 quarts. I'm going to add in 1.5. Go through the method I just described, and then we'll recheck, and we can always add a tad more. So here we are, adding our Honda oil. Pretty easy. This is the whole reason we're doing this. Lifeblood of the engine. Hondas are very durable motors, but if you take care of them, they'll last a very long time. You almost can't destroy them. If you maintain them, they'll last a long time. Be sure to put your oil plug in before you start your motor. You can just lightly put it in for now because we'll probably need to add a little more oil. So now we're going to start the bike, look for leaks around the oil filter housing and the plug, and let it idle for a minute or two, and then we'll let it sit for a minute or two, and then we'll recheck the oil in the sight glass with the bike level. You can always inspect your oil filter to see if you see any large metal debris in there. This one, there's nothing, but it never hurts to take a peek. Okay, there's a couple minutes. We'll shut the bike off. Another trick is you can come up to your trip B, and I zeroed that out. That keeps track of my oil for oil changes, because you still have trip A. I use trip A generally for fuel. That way I know how long I've gone between fuelings. Okay, now we're going to level the bike up, look in the sight glass. I didn't add 1.6, it was like 1.5. Well, we're pretty close. You can see there. Shut the bike off. I let it set for a moment. We could add that 1 point. It said 1.6. We could add a tad more. I'm going to finish off to 1.6. I added a tad more oil. I know that's a real scientific amount. And so let's recheck our sight glass. Okay, the bike is level. We're at the upper end of full, but not over. And we're done. We're good. And that's a satisfying feeling to see clean oil in there. You know you're taking care of your Honda. It'll last a long time. And of course, when you put the bike on its side stand, it'll lean to the left, and it's normal for you not to see oil. But if you lean it back up to where it's in the middle point, then you'll see the corrected value. Okay, that's all there is to it. If you have a skid plate, you'll want to put that on now. And yeah, good luck. Hope this helps and you find this useful. We'll be doing other things with the Honda, so feel free to like and subscribe. And hope this finds you all doing well and enjoying some riding. when I drain my oil to take it to recycling, I like to drain in an oil pan so I can look at the particulate that's in here. Here we see a little bit of normal clutch and break-in material, but if we had large chunks of metal, then you'd want to talk to your dealer. One last thing, make sure you're running a skid plate. There's lots of different ones. I just grabbed this one, this Astrobus skid plate, but there's tons of them. Get the one that you like the best. My frame was getting beat up with rocks, and I only had like 450 miles, and it was getting chewed up. So definitely get yourself a skid plate. It'll save your frame. And I touched up my frame with this Honda HA00987 Alabaster Silver NH700M Honda, and it was a great match, like perfect.